Welcome to This Jungian Life. Three good friends and Jungian analysts, Lisa Marciano, Deborah Stewart, and Joseph Lee, invite you to join them for an intimate and honest conversation that brings a psychological perspective to important issues of the day.
I'm Lisa Marciano, and I'm a Jungian analyst in Philadelphia.
I'm Joseph Lee, and I'm a Jungian analyst in Virginia Beach, Virginia.
I'm Deborah Stewart, a Jungian analyst on Cape Cod.
Contempt is a cold, distancing attitude that writes someone off as beneath respect and not worth engaging. As a defense, it takes feelings we don't want, like shame or fear and hurt, and projects them onto someone else, turning our psychospiritual problem into a blanket judgment of another. The personal cost is significant. Interpersonal connections thin out, curiosity dies, and empathy shrinks. There's a strange somatic whiplash effect, and some research suggests that the contemptuous person suffers from strange physical tensions. And as we would imagine, contempt ruins relationships. For the person on the receiving end, it humiliates them, lowers their standard in the entire community, and invites others to pile on, and drags down their performance and mood. So today, we're going to explore the psychology of contempt.
I have often thought of contempt as the relationship shredder. You just get your claws out and rake them down another's face or a group or an idea. That one is not so much angry as superior, unfeeling, as you mentioned, the distance, and the other deserves that kind of scorn and condemnation. They are beneath decent treatment. They are beneath any kind of concern. So it sort of embraces a lot of feelings. It can embrace disgust. It can embrace disrespect, of all those things that make us absolutely polarized, far away from and utterly unrelated to the person or value or group that is being treated with contempt. It's powerful and it's dangerous, not only for what it can do to another, but what it does to the person who is feeling the contempt.
Yes, it's a poison that hurts anyone who touches it from any perspective.
In contempt, we have lost our humanity. If we're angry with each other, even if we're enraged or we're tearful and we're protesting, all kinds of things have feeling and human feeling in them. With anger, we're often trying to sort of turn up the heat so that the other person will hear me and pay attention to me.
Right. It's a change maker. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But with contempt, it's the assumption of worthlessness. And for me, what is the hardest part of contempt is that eros is gone.
Absolutely.
Love is gone, and the person is engaging in power. That when love is gone, we turn to power, and it is a very poor substitute.
It is. Now, in our efforts to define contempt and even differentiate it from many other negative emotions, which was difficult in parsing through this in preparation, I found a clinical survey that people use. It's called the Dispositional Contempt Scale.
Whoa.
There's several statements that may or may not relate to you. Please read each statement carefully, consider each one by one, and indicate on a scale of 1 to 5 how you actually think, feel, or behave. So I find this interesting because they're descriptive statements that we could then assess ourselves. I tend to disregard people who fall short of my standards.
Hmm.
I often lose respect for others. Feeling disdain for others comes naturally to me. I often feel like others are wasting my time. All in all, I am repelled by others' faults. Others tend to give me reasons to look down on them.
Mhm.
I often feel contempt for others. So that's a bit of it, scaled 1 to 5. If the number gets a bit high, then we might have a disposition that leans towards that attitude. So one of the things that I think is unique about contempt is that the contempt feels like a pre-existing position that we then carry out into the environment, and we wind up assessing the waiters and deciding where they're contemptuous, or we carry it into the department store and we find reasons to devalue or dislike others because of their underperformance, for instance, or this person fell short and that person fell short. So if we've got an eye, which sometimes they call it the jaundiced eye, the yellow eye, and we look upon the world, can we find reasons to think ill of people, or at least exaggerate those reasons until we can then justify taking the stance that they're worthless?
It's such an awful I'm thinking about, your example of, a waiter who, doesn't bring the right thing or, some other mishap, or somebody in a department store, or the proverbial stories about the plumber that comes and doesn't do a good job and the darn thing leaks all over again, or he left a big oily awful mess. It's such an awful attempt at self protection, and it's so much about ego of the I in any of those scenarios is better than. Instead of feeling upset or disappointed, of I ordered this meal and it's really not good, and it's not even hot. And I was looking forward to it so much, and I am really disappointed that it's an attempt to deny those feelings. I went into the department store and I really wanted to buy, a special scarf. And I went in because I knew they would have plenty of them, and this was for, my favorite aunt on a special birthday, and the person isn't interested in showing these things to me. And I look forward to it and I'm disappointed. Or they don't have enough selection and I go, oh, this store. I'm never going there again.
Well, but I think that the contempt sprays something onto the person. What you were, I think, talking about, Deb, is staying close to the specific thing. Like, I'm disappointed that the meal was cold, which is different from feeling that the waiter has no value and I have no respect for them because they transported the cold food to my table. So I think that if, as you're saying, if we stay close to the actual object and we're not gunning for the people around it, then we could have something legitimate to try to address. Well, the food is cold. Maybe you could heat it up. Or I am really disappointed they had nothing in my size. I'm wondering if your store can get that in stock for me. Versus feeling like the person who is working at the store is wasting my time and that they're useless or worthless because I couldn't find something in my size.
It's a disappointed expectation. We go to a restaurant, we expect to have hot food or tasty food or the right kind of food. That's the deal. We go to the department store in order to buy whatever it is we went in to look for. And they don't have any selection, or they don't have it in your size. And they're quote, supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
That's what a department store is for.
Versus having a more generous feeling, a more understanding feeling, or frankly, just complexifying the moment. There's many reasons why that food came cold. There's many reasons why they may not have that sweater in your size, or why that plumber, ran out of the house before cleaning up the big grease stain that was left on your cabinet. That it isn't as simple as they are substandard and beneath concern or should be dismissed.
So the roots of it, I think we're touching on that of, the department store is supposed to have merchandise. So that's a value, that's an established transactional value. Then there's a sense of violation. I have been violated. I'm a paying customer and I get this excuse for a meal. Ooh. So when we feel hurt, disappointed, violated, and we can't afford to feel those feelings, we move into contempt. Oh, I'm not hurt. I'm not vulnerable. I'm not disappointed. I don't feel wronged because you, whoever that you is, some poor hapless person perhaps in a department store, are beneath consideration. It's a way to avoid human feeling, my own and the other person's and the imperfect world we live in.
Right. So contempt in those examples cools off the hot anger, but it also walls off empathy to limit further injury or entanglement. So if we feel like our anger, our vulnerability to the circumstance is too much, contempt cools us off and walls us off. And in that very young place inside of us, it feels like a solution. Like if I don't expect it, or if I just expect shit in this circumstance, well, then I'm not going to be injured or entangled because that's what this is all about.
It takes me to, John Gottman, who's a marriage and relationship guru, calls the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. I never get them all right, but there's anger and criticism, stonewalling,
Yes,
defensiveness, and contempt.
contempt. I think those are 5 horsemen, but we'll go with 5.
Okay, thank you. Math is not my strong suit either. It takes me to contempt as another relational serious sign, which is cutoff.
Yeah.
Of now I have cut off from, this situation, that service person, maybe somebody in my personal life. Of like, that's it then, I'm done. I'm done. That's it. There's no point talking to him.
So there's that dismissal energy, but I think the contempt is before we dismiss them, there's this veneer of very negative feeling.
Eye rolling.
Over the person, eye rolling, huffing. Teenagers are often very contemptuous of their parents.
Yeah.
And that's in service to kind of pulling away that if they thought the parents were all wise or smart, maybe they'd never take risks on their own. But mom and dad, they are God.
That's a good one because, if you really react to that and say, wait a minute, what did you just do? It's sort of like, oh my God, you're not going to make a big deal about that, are you? So it's a real gotcha. It's very good.
Mm-hmm.
But there's also sarcasm, name calling, mockery, open mockery, and that favorite, which is the joke, quote unquote, that has a little barb in it, the little gotcha joke.
It's not that funny.
Well, and then if you say, hey, whoa, hold it, wait a minute, they say, oh, come on.
I was just joking.
Boy, contempt is tough stuff. The more I circle around this, I'm kind of wanting to change our topic for the week. This is toxic. It is really toxic. And it enables the person expressing contempt to completely not only cut off the other person in this condemnation, but to cut off contact with one's own shadow.
Yes, absolutely. Because in that moment, the person is projecting their own disowned incompetencies or shame or something like that. And then by putting it all in the waiter, let's say, as the example. I was a waiter, by the way, for a lot of years when I was working my way through college. So it's all their problem. They're the failing one. And I'm the evaluator over here who can discern what a failure that other person is and feel quite satisfied with that. And often contemptuous folks like to communicate that. It's not simply in their own minds that they're feeling contemptuous, but they will seek out alignment with other people to all kind of pile on to that errant waiter over there in the corner.
Oh my goodness. It's, what I'm thinking about though is the polarization of one person is good, superior, justified, right. And the other person, of course, is, as I say, beneath contempt, worthless, devalued, etc. So we have a real good-bad split, which takes me to what one of the early psychologists, Melanie Klein, called the need in development to attain the depressive position. That it's thought that really little kids, babies, toddlers, who have, judge everything according to whether they like it or don't like it. When mommy is pleasing me or, Uncle George is dandling me on his knee, that's good. And when somebody says no, they're bad. I know that because I don't like it. And that's the only standard that a toddler has to measure anything by. And what eventually occurs is the ability to really think about the other person as an other. That mom or Uncle George or my teacher or anyone else, it has good days and bad days, things that work well for me, things that don't, things I like, things I don't. And I'm attached to the whole of that person. My parent, my relative, and authority figure. That things are not good, bad, right, wrong, black, white. They're an awkward, difficult combination of all kinds of things. And yet we regress to that when we are contemptuous of someone because we've gone right back to that early stage of polarization. I am displeased, therefore I make that person the all bad object.
Exactly. So if we stay in that Kleinian model, the manic position is when the child is howling for whatever it is they need. And Klein imagined that the infant believed that their cries conjure the mother to then do whatever is required, obviously.
And they do.
And it creates a kind of omnipotence inside of the child, an omnipotent expectation, and also reinforces, as is true when you have a little baby, that their fussiness or their lamentations, their cries, should be responded to by the people around them. At a certain age, as you were saying, Deb, the child has to realize that the parent is an autonomous being and is choosing to help them or not based on a number of things, and that they have to establish a functional relationship to negotiate for the things that they need.
Yeah.
And usually by being nice and the other things that we do to be pro-social and get our needs met. So I think you're quite right that the contemptuous uprising of devaluing the person, I think there is a very young fantasy that the person's disdain will somehow act upon the other person and force them to provide something that they may autonomously not wish to or be unable to.
That's an interesting point, and I want to go back for a second and grab hold of a great word that you put out there, omnipotence. Because I think you're right. I think contempt is striving for omnipotence, and that my omnipotent power of disdain, that I have the power to destroy. Of course, it's not true. But you do have the power, if you use contempt, to destroy a relationship. You will not destroy the person, one hopes. Although we have all heard stories from friends and certainly in our consulting rooms of kids that were treated with contempt. Sometimes, not in a particularly overt way. Of all the kids, she's just not the smart one. Oh, yeah, of course, yeah, she never gets good grades. She's not that smart.
Or I think more pernicious is, the daughter is a beautiful 16-year-old girl. She's a knockout. She's dressed to the nines and she's walking out of the house. And mom says something contemptuous about how she's dressed. Really? You're going to leave the house in that?
Oh, it makes me tear up.
Yeah.
Because you're also pointing to contempt infused with envy.
Absolutely.
Snow White's evil queen stepmother. We feel the mother in that case feels bad, feels less than to see this beautiful 16-year-old going out. Yeah, maybe the shoes are a little over the top and the shorts are short. She's young, she's 16, she's loving her body.
I mean, we could even dislike the clothing and have a conversation about the shoes.
Yes.
But it's when the daughter becomes an object of contempt, then we're in dark water and the relationship.
We're also linking it to shame.
The way shame is getting moved around. Yeah.
Exactly. That both contempt and shame are about the essence of the other person, not about what that person is wearing or did or made a choice. It's like shame and guilt. Whoever the you is, are somehow tainted and awful in your essence. And that's contempt. It's not just that you, whoever the you is, behave badly, or the plumber who left the oily mess under the sink. It's essence of that person.
Right. If we look at that disdain scale, it's not about objects, it's about people. I disregard people. I lose respect for people. I feel disdain. Other people are wasting my time. I'm repelled by other people's faults. It's all about the person and not about the shoes. Like if it was just about the length of the shorts, then you might be like, listen, sweetheart, I love you, but you're not going out in those hot pants,
And then we would have to engage with that person. Maybe our proverbial teenager would be angry. Maybe we'd get angry, but it's not the same as contempt.
Right. There might be a war about who's going to be in charge, but if a power struggle, I get to pick out my own clothes. You'll never leave the house in that outfit.
Yeah.
Like, yes, it's a power struggle. But if contempt moves in, then there's something darker that's going on. Having conflict is normal.
Yeah. But what we're talking about in that instance, your vignette of the teenager, is the scapegoating and the outcast of you, young woman, are, really beneath connecting with. And it's a global pronunciation of, if you go out looking like that, you're all over bad. Instead of a 16-year-old who has pride in her body and a certain sense of power about her beauty, and maybe displaying it in a way that we think is really inappropriate. But what are we feeling? What would that parent be feeling in order to express contempt? A cutoff from her own memories of once having felt that way herself, perhaps, or didn't feel that way as a teenager and never had access to that kind of body pride. Our own shadow is always there somewhere, and we think we're doing it to the other person, but we're also doing it inside.
Right. That's the turnaround that we hope people would engage in from a Jungian standpoint, is to be able to then ask, why am I looking down on this person? And this brings us to a dream that Jung recounts when he was trying to explain compensatory dreams. He was working at the Brook Holsley, and he had a dream that one of the patients was seated high above on a rather magnificent crown, and Jung was way at the bottom, under her feet, kind of looking up. And he was mystified by the dream. And then what he realized is that this particular patient, who was indigent and schizophrenic and terribly compromised, Jung realized that he had been looking down on the patient, and that the dream maker flipped the situation around. So he was the one who was being looked down on, forcing him to then reflect both on his unconscious attitude, but on what it feels like to be looked down on, and how significant that is. So it's a thing that any of us could fall prey to. I think we're concerned about contempt when it becomes the dominant attitude and the dominant way that a person's ego is evaluating what's going on around them. But we can get caught into being the one who looks down upon. And as you said, Deb, there may be many reasons why people believe they have to elevate themselves at any cost, and one of the costs is to have any kind of a horizontal relationship with other people, to be held, to be intimate, to be disclosing. That's all abandoned as soon as we elevate ourselves and everybody is beneath us. Is anybody allowed on that platform that you're standing on? Are you the only one a mile up in the sky? And you're looking down on the little people below. I mean, maybe it gives you an enhanced sense of something or other, but when you turn around, if you're the only one up there, that's a chilling reality.
Yeah. It's a terrible dehumanization on both sides of what the recipient feels or could feel, but what the person expressing contempt is also cutting him or herself off from, of feeling connection with ourselves, connection with the other, connection with all the nuances of feeling. They've all been banished. The one person is up on high in an arrogant, unfeeling, cold, judgmental, seemingly justified, righteous place. And the other, or a group, or a value has been consigned not only not to the trash heap, but to the sewer.
Right.
I'm like, oh, get rid of this and just sweep it away. I think it might be I'm thinking about this in relation to hatred, but hatred has more energy in it, more sharpness than contempt.
I mean, hatred is a desire to destroy something, I think, or someone. Anger, I think, is triggered by a sense of unjust harm, and then that motivates a kind of confrontation. Healthy anger is change-seeking, ultimately. Disgust, I think, is triggered by a perceived contamination of some kind, and that pulls us into avoiding or expulsion. But contempt is often triggered by a perceived global inferiority, that they are all inferior. And then the whiplash, which is the secret payoff, is if they are all inferior, then I must be universally superior, because I can so easily see how inadequate everyone else is for whatever reason that I can find. And believe me, it's easy to find things to complain about. I mean, you could have we've all been at dinners like this where it's like an incredible dinner, but there'll be one person who's going to say something contemptuous about the thing that strips the value out of it, that makes it not good enough, makes it inadequate.
Well, you've hit on another one of contempt's cousins, as it were, which is complaining. And I think complaining, it has in it an implicit request for empathy of the dinner wasn't good, or I didn't get served until everybody else was served and it was all cold. How come this, why doesn't so-and-so ever come over anymore? There's a wish for the other, a wish to have felt loved or pleased or served. We want a connection that didn't happen, that I or whoever, really wanted to have happen. I'm missing something. And of course, everybody carries on about complaining and shouldn't complain and don't complain. And I am kind of in the place of at least complaining is a request for connection. I wanted this and I didn't get it. I still want something else. If we could just look below the surface. And maybe when complaints do not get addressed, do not get heard, do not get answered, the complainer turns to contempt of, well, I didn't care anyway. I didn't want to go to that party. I would never go to a party at their house. Oh, they're so...
Right. That there's something wrong with the people throwing the party and who would possibly lower themselves to be associated with those folks.
The more we walk around this, I can just feel how affected I am. That it is just so sad. It must be one of Dante's 7 circles of hell, or 9 circles. I can never remember exactly how that's structured. But it's just such a loss of our basic human empathy, fellow feeling, flexibility, and basic characterological ego strength that we hope when we've reached, let's say, young adulthood, that there's enough sense of self here not to take everything so personally, that it's okay. Accidents happen. I did so much for those neighbors down the street. They invited all kinds of people and not me. Can we just feel hurt and left out, and without going to that cold, razor sharp, non-relational, awful place of contempt?
The person who's predisposed to contempt, I think, has a kind of scorecard, a kind of ranking system inside themselves. It's not always clear where they got it from, but they are constantly evaluating everything around them, scoring it up in a certain way and finding it deficient and inadequate.
That's your dispositional scorecard.
That's right. That on a scale of 0 to 10, you got a 0.5, based on whatever often secret criteria that nobody really knows. And I think often the person who's predisposed to contempt, they're not even totally sure about what their scorecard is. So one of the examples I think that shows up in mythology is a play called The Bacchae. And in that play, the god Bacchus or Dionysus is approaching one of the cities. I think is it Thebes?
Sure. Somewhere in Greece.
Yeah. Pentheus is the king there, and he finds the Dionysic rebels just contemptuous, sensuous, contemptuous,
Instinctual,
problematic,
yuck.
instinctual, exactly. And so he orders all of the followers to stay in the city. He orders the gates to the city locked. And he's really sure that he's going to keep that contemptuous, drunken fella, Dionysus Bacchus, out of his nice, orderly city. And then what happens is that in the blink of an eye, Dionysus is suddenly strolling through the city and comes upon Pentheus and just starts chatting with him. Pentheus has absolutely no idea that this is a god. And after a few minutes, Dionysus has taken all his clothes off, dressed him in the ritual garments of the Bacchae, and then just kind of leading him out of the city to participate in the woods with the other maenads who mistake him for a deer and rip his head off. In fact, his mother does that when she is in a divine frenzy. So it's one of those ancient object lessons, at least relative to the gods, that to feel contempt for one of the gods is a very dangerous proposition.
There's the arrogance that Pentheus as the king, and the king is often a symbol of ego. In charge, I got this, what I say goes. When ego arrogates to itself all authority, all power, all judgment, all everything. And then what happens? The polar opposite occurs.
That the god just takes him over.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that calls up the great Jungian word enantiodromia, which was a word in my very first Jungian seminar when I was first time I ever ventured in, and I read this word and I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm in over my head. But it is the idea from ancient Greece that it's not just the pendulum swinging from one side to the other, but that one extreme actually creates in itself the seeds of its opposite. So if we arrogate to ourselves all kinds of power and rightness and egotistical judgment, it will take us where the King Pentheus went, into raw, awful, instinctual realms. We will land in the opposite.
Right. Methinks the lady doth protest too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
That the thing that we find so repugnant in other people, so diminishing and inferior, is often the object of fascination inside the individual.
I am landing on a square called humility.
Which would be the correction.
And if we have contempt, we are not in a place of humility. It's the old saying, pride goeth before a fall and all that stuff, or the example you use of Jung's dream of the woman who was looking down on him. And he recognized he could learn from the dream. The other archetypal example, I think, is Yahweh talking to Job.
A very sad story where poor Mr. Job has definitely become an object of contempt.
Well, he's been objectified because he's a pawn in a contest between Yahweh and Satan. And so they put him, he goes through all kinds of awful trials and tribulations. And finally, Job sort of says, I don't understand this. I want to find out why. And it's a very long dialogue. And, the Lord answers and says out of the whirlwind, "Who is this that darkens counsel by words without knowledge? Gird up your loins. I will question you, and you'll declare to me, where were you when I laid the foundation of the earth?" And so it goes.
How dare you question me, Yahweh says, and then gives him a good comeuppance.
But it has effect. And I think there's a lesson in this for all of us, that if we can stand in the presence and say, why? Here I am. Job is willing to engage, and Yahweh restores to Job, all that had been taken away, his family and his wealth and so on. And according to Jung, man transforms God as God transforms man. And I think that is what we must do if and when we are treated with contempt, is to be able simply to be present and say, what is going on here? I am engaging with you. Job reached out to engage with the mystery, with the greater power. And that is hard to do.
It is. Edinger, who was another wonderful post-Jungian writer, he writes a lot about archetypes and the relationship between archetypes and ego. And in one of his interviews, Edinger brings forward the idea of the offended God image, and how if the ego is weak or does not have a proper understanding of its relationship to the archetypes, that the archetype of the offended God can rise up in an individual and possess them with a kind of transpersonal energy. And Edinger uses the case of road rage, where he says that a person is possessed by Yahweh and offers himself as an agent of divine justice.
Oh my goodness.
And calls this onslaught of instinct forward, chasing down the person that did some infraction or perceived infraction on the highway,
right,
feeling contempt and rage and righteousness and this absolute certainty about the punishment for the person that, beeped their horn and frightened you for a moment there.
That is a great example because of the inflation. It is taking on God-like powers. I am entitled to inflict humiliation and pain and punishment on you. I remember being caught in this one time. My husband and I were driving. To this day, I have no idea what I did. So your husband's kind of nodding off a little in the passenger seat. I'm driving along, and the car in front of me slams the brakes on, and we're on a highway. And so I slammed my brakes on. My husband, of course, is jolted into full wakefulness. And it was just an awful thing. If I tried to get around him, he wouldn't let me go around him. He did it again. to be the object of that kind of arrogation to oneself, of that kind of power, is just terrifying.
So the solution is that we have to wrestle with the onslaught of this power.
Yeah.
And Edinger likes to talk about, Jacob wrestling with the angel, that something inside of us, if we're educated a bit, has to refuse the identification with that wrath or that contempt and to wrestle with it. He also says something that I love Edinger's writing. Intense affects are manifestations of the greater personality. One should never take responsibility for intense affect. It falls from above or roars from the depths. The task is to suffer and wrestle with it and not become it. Now, sometimes it's really big, and maybe the person that's in the car with us is yelling at us saying, "Will you stop doing it?" Like it's obvious that we're possessed by something. Contempt is a less fiery energy. It's a colder, icier, stiletto stabbing energy. So it can be a little more hidden than road rage. But if we think about it as an upwelling of something archetypal, that we are entitled to more than we're fairly entitled to, frankly, that other people have no independent reality beyond what we think they should provide to make us happy, that the world has simply become some kind of a breast that's designed to just meet our demands. And if it doesn't, well, then it has no utility. What good are you if you're a dry nipple? What good are you if you can't give me what I want, when I want it, in the way that I want it, at the right time that I want, in the right proportion that I wanted, with the right wrappings around it, smelling just the right way, and on and on and on, because the endless conditions that the contemptuous mount onto everything makes it pretty sure that nothing's going to ever fit that bill.
And it is an incredibly regressive place. All those things that you just said are, it's like the 4-year-old who just wants his way. But it's kind of iced over, as in cake icing and cold ice, iced over with a kind of judgmental veneer of superiority and righteousness. And that makes it even worse because then it's hard to penetrate. And yet, what has really been damaged is the person who's so cut off from fellow feeling, from empathy, from a humility, from connectedness, relationship. That's a lot to lose.
There's a great cost of being contemptuous. It can even make it difficult to want to leave your house sometimes. That if your assumption is that everything I'm going to encounter is going to smell bad, taste bad, feel bad, and leave me frustrated, what's the point? So it's an attack on optimism. It's an attack on even the hope that something might be pleasant for you. But contempt ruins the ability to feel pleasure in something, even something simple.
But I think we should, as the good Jungians that we are or want to think we are, the other side of contempt, it must have some kind of usefulness, some kind of effect, some other side other than just all the things we've been talking about that are destructive.
It's got to have a payoff, or else why would people do it?
And you were the one earlier, and I think we've all experienced this, who said, well, studies show that it can improve short-term performance.
Yep. There are definitely some, I don't want to say benefits, but there is a telos it's trying to accomplish something. And that's true that our symptoms are our best attempts to solve something inside of us, which is something you were leaning into as well. We are trying to make something different through our contempt. So when we use the word telos, it's a central concept for Jung that everything is moving purposefully. It might be doing it in a very inelegant way. It might be doing it in a way we might regret upon reflection. But energy is always trying to accomplish something. So from that standpoint, contempt might be a way to protect our boundaries, that we may feel that we are too vulnerable, as you had said earlier, too alone, too diminished. And so then contempt can rise up as a way to kind of wall ourselves off from further injury or emotional entanglements. If we haven't found a way to face our own shame, our own inadequacies or failures, the reason we split and project is that the ego hasn't attained enough muscularity to be able to wrestle with our own failings. And so we keep pushing them to other people, and then we feel contempt for them as a way of pretending that it's not in us.
And I think it's trying to power the other person or people. It's a power play. That if one person can berate another with that coldness and contempt, that it could, in that reactive place where the person is hurt or shocked or surprised and, all the rest of it where they, oh, okay, I'll get on it. I'll do it right away. Oh, okay. But it's only a short-term solution, and it's the kind of thing that can breed resentment. And then we have a vicious cycle in the offing, perhaps.
And we can also notice in ourselves, everyone, that we can have temporary periods of contemptuousness. And one of the ubiquitous examples is when we are trying to detach from something that we used to invest in, like a job. So you just got to notice they're going to lay you off in 2 weeks. Everybody who's just gotten the notice they're going to get laid off immediately starts contemptuously devaluing the job and the corporation. Oh, my boss is such a la blah blah, and that company, it sucks. And if you only knew everything that was going on during that. And so we can feel contemptuous of the thing that we have to separate from, because it's more painful to feel pulled away from something that we love or something that's highly valuable.
And I'm thinking of a couple of times with people where, when after a long struggle with a family member or a boss or someone in personal life, has failed to reestablish connection or change or anything, it can be, I wonder if contempt can be a sign that this relationship has just gone cold. And by having that feeling, it gets us to detach. We start to give up on the relationship. No point in negotiating. I think it may still be kind of a masquerade, but it could contain information that this is over.
Could be. Although it would be more elegant if we could just acknowledge that there's no energy left. There's no motivation.
Yes.
Rather than having to aggressively strip value out of another person. But life isn't always that elegant.
And I'm just wondering if it could be an initial stage of separating. Like your example of the notice that people are going to get laid off, and that some people might react just that way of, well, who needs this job anyway?
Exactly.
Everybody, they're all jerks and this company stinks, and that we have to leave. And it could be part of a process of having to leave and then later on feeling the loss, missing the colleagues, worrying about getting another job. But it's worth one way or another, I think, when we feel contempt, it's a call to self-reflection. What am I experiencing here? What does it mean? What is this feeling trying to tell me? It's like we always talk about with dreams. Something is trying to tell us something.
As if we were to notice any of our very strong feelings of any kind, and to be able to turn in with curiosity, what's active? What's on the move? Can I talk to it? Can I imagine it in some way?
Yeah.
A last bit of around contempt that might be worth talking about is that when we have an undeveloped capacity for deliberation, or we feel an exhaustion around deliberation, we may rise up and feel contempt for the other options to free ourselves up from constant equivocation. So I'm just going to go to this college, and part of helping myself choose this one college is I'm going to feel contempt for the other 10 colleges I got into, so that I don't have to keep evaluating all the innumerable options, so we can strip energy out of the competition, leaving ourselves one narrow channel to walk down. And there's a certain economy in that. Again, these things all, by the way, happen unconsciously. Nobody chooses to be contemptuous. It's something that breaks upon us. But that's a time sometimes we'll hear or feel contempt, and it may be in service to just getting us to move in a single track on something instead of holding everything in equal value.
Yeah. And hopefully it gets us to move toward ourselves through introspection, toward empathy, engagement, deliberation, negotiation. So hopefully it can nudge us into a more human and more connected place with ourselves and with whatever in the external world we're wrestling with.
And with that,
Okay, let's go to a dream.
and before we go to a dream, I'd like to mention that we do have Dream School, where Deb and Lisa and myself do meet with students live various times during the month and provide very varied ways of approaching dream interpretation, so you can learn how to interpret your own dreams and the dreams of your buddies around you. It is endlessly fascinating. It is worth every hour you might put in to learn it. It's an incredibly rich process.
I met, along with Lisa, some of our new dreamers. We have an orientation, and I'm aware every time that we do this of just how rich all the offerings in Dream School are. Just go over and take a look at the website and click on a whole bunch of stuff and just see what jumps up in you and at you from the more of yourself that dream work can offer you.
Absolutely. So our website is thisjungianlife.com, JUNGIAN life.com. Right up in the banner, you'll see a little bit for a dream school. And if you click on that, your whole world might change. So with that in mind, I will read the dream we're going to interpret. A 40-year-old female who works as a part-time accountant and is transitioning to full-time photographer, shares this dream with us. I walk into a funeral in progress. There was an elderly woman at the front of the ceremony laying on a table. It wasn't a bed and it wasn't a coffin. She was still alive. The room was dimly lit. A teacher from my children's school was at the front speaking to the woman laying down while holding her toddler in her arms. The child was facing out towards the woman lying down, who I think was named Sunny. Sunny was saying how she made all these bad choices for herself, and that's why she's dying. She shouldn't have smoked all these years. As she was expressing her regrets, she was covering her face with her bony hands. The teacher is reassuring her, saying, "We love you so much. You mean everything to us, and we don't care about your bad choices. Look at your grandchild. He loves you more than anything." I walk into the room and immediately start to try to record this on my phone. It feels important for me to document. My husband is there with me. A Hispanic man walks over to my husband and has a brief conversation with him and then walks over to me. He says it was very disrespectful of me to barge into this private ceremony and immediately get out my phone. I realize he's right and feel embarrassed. He was respectful but very stern. I go sit down at a table and continue to watch the ceremony. For context, she writes, "I've been beating myself up lately for having a hard time with motherhood. I have a wonderful husband that helps and does all of the things, but I am the default caregiver about 95% of the time. I've recently been overwhelmed by it after homeschooling for a year due to COVID." Her main feelings in the dream were shame, vulnerability, and sadness.
Well, my first reaction is not about the dream, but about motherhood. And I love Lisa's book for addressing all those feelings that none of us want to have, but do, about being mothers. It is the hardest job in the world, is to be a mother, especially homeschooling during COVID. I'm just feeling a lot of of empathy and kind of wanting to validate that, yeah, it's hard. And to be the default caregiver 95% of the time, oh my goodness, it's time to get out of the house. Have a change of pace, change the channel, something. But let's go to the dream. Something is here's a funeral. That is the dream setting.
So she walks in. She believes that a funeral is in progress. And as she enters, there's a feeling of ceremony, and a living woman is on a table, which, by the way, I would probably call an altar. But because it seems like there's a strange religious dimension to this.
Mm-hmm. It's a ceremony.
It's a ceremony. And she's still alive. The room is dimly lit. So when in a dream things are dim, that there isn't so much ego awareness, that there's something that's more of the unconscious that's probably present there. Now, we immediately have this pair of opposites right from the beginning. This is a funeral, but the person hasn't died yet.
And her name is Sunny.
And she's rather sunny. So death and life, the child who's somewhat newly born, and the prospect of mortality are living in the same room. And if we didn't catch it, bringing the child towards the woman who may be nearing death is this bringing together of these opposites of eros and thanatos, of love and death, coming together in this woman's psyche, which is a really powerful moment if we saw this played out in a movie, which often actually it does, where somebody is dying and a child is brought to them to interact with, perhaps to bestow a blessing even. it does something to our soul to see this combination of forces.
Mhm. And I think these opposites kind of culminate in the opposite about the bad choices and the teacher saying, "We love you so much." That there's a coming together of the ego says, "Oh, I shouldn't have smoked." She expresses regret, covers her face. And the opposite is the teacher reassuring her, "You mean everything to us. We love you. We don't care about your bad choices. Your grandchild loves you. The child, the new beginning, the new life, young life." That's a very powerful combination of opposites. The bad choices, the regrets, being met with love, and the child that represents new life. And then our dream ego. It's always interesting when the dream ego is an observer somewhere. We'll get that to a minute. But the dream ego gets that this is important to notice, important to record, is interested. It's important to document. And her husband is there too. So there's another kind of conjunctio, a meeting, a pairing, man and wife. So Joseph, what do you think about observers in dreams? Sometimes people are watching a movie
Mm-hmm.
or something on TV, or standing outside a crowd, or in this case, the funeral.
Well, I think that sometimes, for instance, the perspective moves from third person to first person and back again, that I'm the one having the conversation, and then maybe halfway through the dream, I'm on the ceiling watching myself have a conversation. So I think that the dream maker is very generous in terms of helping us titrate our exposure to unconscious material. Some unconscious material is so powerful that the dream maker puts us in the audience, so to speak, when we're watching it, because we can take a sip of it. We need the distance and breathing room. Sometimes we need to be right in the middle of it in order to have an adequate impact. So she starts with a distancing gesture. "Oh, where's my phone? I think if I just film this, that'll be the right way to approach it." So which is a distancing move. And then there's a correction, that somebody comes forward and says, "This is disrespectful. This is not the right time to be distanced." And then the dream ego feels embarrassed because she recognizes he's right. So the medicine in the dream for me is this clarity that this tension around end of life remorse and love, that's something she may need to lean into more fully rather than take a photograph or a recording of. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's it's well said, and that the medicine in the dream is to be engaged in a feelingful way, which at the end of the dream is exactly what happens. I sit down at a table and continue to watch the ceremony. And she's doing that in her association too, of the regret. She says, "I've been beating myself up for having a hard time with motherhood." So that's a form of regret, but it's a little judgmental, a little moralistic, versus motherhood is hard and I am having regrets. And she did homeschool during COVID. And there's also love and a kind of forgiveness. There we are in our humanity with all our faults and foibles and our hearts and connections.
This is also a dream without a very clear lysis, that this is kind of like, act one of the play where something very important and profound has happened. it's still in motion. What's happened is she's figured out her position is to watch the ceremony and to ponder it. And we don't know where the ceremony is going to go. It's like a basket of factors has shown up, but we don't quite know how Sunny is going to take this all in yet. I mean, she's declared she's faced with terrible regret and shame. She's hiding her face. The teacher comes and talks about love. And so those two energies are next to each other, and now she's going to stand and watch. And we still have, Act 2, which is how are those attitudes going to work on each other? We don't know yet.
I think the polarity there of the woman for whom this funeral is in progress, it's dimly lit, it's a funeral, but the woman is named Sunny and is alive.
Mm-hmm.
May reflect those two parts of our dreamer that have those same positions of something that is not really well alive and is lying on this altar, that something is dying, needs to die.
It needs to be sacrificed, maybe.
And there's a ceremony around that, and yet is maintaining a persona of sunny and upbeat and alive. And so some things here that for all of us are asking to be paid attention to, understood, and integrated. And I like your idea that this is Act 1. So she can dream the dream on, and then what happens?
And I like your comment about the sunniness, though, because here's a woman on the table or on the altar that's kind of produced a problem. She has these end-of-life regrets, and it seems by her gesture that she's ashamed, but nobody actually addresses that. That there's a baby that's brought over, says, we don't care about your bad choices, we love you, love you, love you. But nobody's creating space for the woman to say, but tell me about your regrets. Tell me about your burdens. Let's not be so sunny all at first. That let's go down with you into the shadow, into the pain, and then let's see whether we can beckon you back up into life. So the introduction of love in this moment can have a silencing effect. Like one of the things my supervisors told me really early on is when a client starts crying, do not shove a box of tissues in their hands. Because that's a meta-communication that you're telling them not to have that feeling. Like keep the tissues to the side, they know where they are. If they want them, they can get them. But don't interfere with the emergence of feeling, because this woman wants to talk about her regrets.
Yes, she does. And I think that's where I started, was with a wish to validate how hard mothering is and that we do have regrets. That just goes with the territory. And in the dream, that the sunny is the false front for the regrets of, tell me about your regrets.
Yeah, the bad choices that are troubling you. Let's talk.
Yeah. Rather than wafting them away. There is, as you always say, Joseph, so much medicine in a dream like this. Something has come to you that has a profound ability to be helpful.
Thanks for listening. To submit a dream, suggest an episode topic, or join our mailing list, visit our website, thisjungianlife.com. If you enjoyed this episode, give us 5 stars and a good review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and make sure to click the notification bell to be alerted whenever we upload videos. And keep up with all things TJL by following us on Instagram, Facebook, X, and TikTok.